Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here. I'm doing my spoiler discussion for Thor Ragnarok. If you guys don't want any spoilers, I did do a spoiler-free review just before this, so I'll have that in. I'll have a link to that in the description, so you guys can check that out, check out the movie, and then come back here if you are interested. But getting right into it, I actually want to talk about Hela. I mentioned in my spoiler-free review that she was a great villain. I loved her as a villain. She was super cool. I never thought a character whose main power was basically spawning blades would be that cool, but I was like, man, I've never considered that as an epic power or anything, but she made it awesome. And technically she was able to summon, like, you know, spikes in general, because she, especially like at the end when she's in the water, she shoots out on like a spike. But I was like, man, that is super cool. And there's some parts where she makes other weapons, but for the most part, it's just like, I'm just gonna make a sword that basically shoots out like a bullet, and she's just stabbing through people. They killed three of the, like 3 out of the 4 or 5 like other gods there, and that was like in the beginning. As soon as she came in, like when she gets through the Bifrost, it was like, who are you? Boom, boom, boom. A couple of blades. She kills them, and then the Executioner, or Scourge, you know, he kind of goes back and forth in this because he wasn't like just full on villain like I thought he was. You know, he's just there. He's like, I'm just a janitor, but she like murdered those 2 guys. I can't remember their names, but you know, they're in the first 2 movies. So it's like, oh man, those are like the other gods. You know, Thor's buddies. Technically his siblings, I believe. I don't remember, but they killed all of them off. I think the only reason that they didn't have Sif in here get killed is because Jamie Alexander is in a TV show right now, so she probably just couldn't be in the movie. But I was like, man, they killed all of them, and I don't know what in the world that means for, you know, the future Thor films. However, that's going to end up playing out, you know, in general with his character. But they led to some interesting stuff, especially early on in the movie. One thing that they kind of reference, which certainly plays a huge part at the end of the film, is that when Thor and Loki find Odin and they're kind of sitting with him in front of like the CG hillside, or I mean, they obviously weren't there. It was like I couldn't help it when I was looking. I was like, it's so easy to tell that he's like CG'd right on top of it. It just looked weird. But during that portion, when he was like, you know, look out there and remember this place, and he says home, I was like, are they hinting towards there's some comic book stuff where I was like, I feel like they might be hinting towards like the new Asgard. Like technically in the comics right now, there's 2 Asgards. It's like Asgard, the realm, and then there's like a place that's basically Asgard, but it's on Earth. And I was like, is that what they're hinting at? Because I feel like that's what they're hinting at. And then of course the end of the film, they're like, well, we're going to Earth. And I was like, oh, they're definitely possibly going to do that. And then of course the giant ship comes out. But I was like, oh man, that seemed really cool to me, because I was like, oh, that's just a cool thing to bring, you know, over from the comic books. And I guess I just never really thought they would do that. I just assumed, with it being Thor Ragnarok, I was like, of course, you know, Hela's going to try to take over, but they're going to stop Ragnarok. I assumed that was going to be the case. And it was like, no, Ragnarok totally happened. Asgard is officially gone. And I was like, that's actually pretty awesome. And that was one of the reasons I liked Hela so much, is that she was such a hardcore villain that they could not beat her. No matter what happened, you know, she knocks Thor's eye out, and he goes into like, you know, full control with his abilities. He does like the Raiden move from Mortal Kombat, which made me laugh so hard. But it was super cool, and like they're going through, and he's got all his lightning powers, and he's trying to take her down, and Valkyrie's teaming up with him, and they're flipping and swapping in and out to take her down, and it just does not work. They cannot kill this woman. And it was like, okay, well, we can't beat her, so apparently we need to actually, you know, continue like basically the prophecy of Ragnarok. So they have to bring back Surtur using the Eternal Flame. And I was like, that was actually really cool. I still wish he was in it more, because of course they tease us with that scene of Hulk like jumping up trying to fight him. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but Hulk fighting Surtur is pretty cool. I thought for a second they were gonna do it where Hulk fell off of Asgard, like when he was fighting the wolf. I thought he was going to fall, and there it was going to be that he fell basically into Surtur's dimension or whatever, and like somehow, you know, Surtur would come back, and that's how that would play out. But that was not the case. Ultimately, they just have to end up bringing him back in order to complete Ragnarok, because that is the only way to defeat Hela. So I thought that was cool. I always love it when it's like there's no way for the heroes themselves, like the main characters cannot beat this person. So it's like, all right, we have to bring in, technically in this case, they did have to bring in another villain. So I love that. I thought it was great. I was like, I love the fact that they could not beat her. She was just too powerful. All this stuff, like going through the whole movie, she's revealing all these secrets and stuff like that. It was like, you know, oh, this is what we have. And we have like all the religious stuff with Odin and his wife and Thor and Loki and everybody else, they got like, the halos and stuff to look majestic. And she's like, a bunch of lies. And she, throws all the blades up and brings down the mural. And then there's like a hidden death mural underneath that where it's him as like this insanely powerful leader with his daughter. And they're wiping out the lands, and it's just, they're taking everything over. And I was like, that's actually cool. She's revealing all this information that no one knew because it was just centuries and centuries ago before Asgard, became what it was today. So I love that. Like all her revelations and her going through, like Odin's treasures and everything. And this is a moment where I thought it was awesome that they referenced the Infinity Gauntlet that's in there, because that was a big question that people had. And I believe that was from the very first movie. And people were like, oh, but the Infinity Gauntlet is in there. So it was like, oh, maybe it was fake or something like that. That's one of the big theories. And the first thing she does is walk up to it and it was like fake. And she pushes it over. And I was like, that's cool that they referenced that. Like, that was something from like the first Thor movie before it really even went into the Infinity Gauntlet stuff. So I thought that was awesome. It was like the first thing, she pushes that aside. And they go through some of the other things. We see the Tesseract there, which they make a quick reference to at the end of the film. Who knows what Loki did with that, because we don't see a scepter, but he's Loki. He can do what he wants. He can shrink that bad boy right down, and he's got the Tesseract again. So they definitely make a reference to it. He had enough time. I'm sure he picked it up, and that's an easy way, because they don't show him go past it. They don't show him pick it up. They can kind of just pick and choose in the future. Like, all right, did he pick it up? Did he leave it there to get destroyed? Which, of course, he didn't, because it's one of the Infinity Stones. So naturally, he didn't leave it. He totally has it. But I thought that was a great moment. I was like, okay, so, they have him kind of stop there, then they cut back to the action, and then we just see him drop Surtur's head into the eternal fire to bring him back to life. But great way to end the film out. I was surprised to see Thor lose an eye. Technically, I knew that because somebody was a douchebag on Instagram and they wanted to spoil it for me. So I knew that was coming in the film, but I was like, all right, that was not what I would have expected for a Thor movie. Now he's just going to have an eye patch, throughout the entire, rest of the cinematic universe. Maybe somebody will, if he's one of the people that gets killed off, because that's a big theory for Infinity War, if he's one of the people that gets eviscerated or just wiped out, maybe he'll come back and he won't have the eye patch anymore. So that'll probably be an easy way for them to do that. Like, all right, well, let's kill him. That way when we bring him back to life, he can just be like 100% and he won't have the eye patch anymore. It'll just be, boom, he's walking around with two eyes. But yeah, I love the way they utilized Hela as far as her being such a cool villain. I do wish she was in the movie more. I mentioned that before, but otherwise she was awesome. Like her just summoning the blades, her fighting all the people, like fighting like the full-on army in the beginning of the film when she first gets to Asgard. It was all really cool. I loved all of that. The very beginning of the movie was actually pretty cool. It does actually start off with Thor going up against Surtur. And when he breaks free, that was a cool fight scene. Like him spinning the hammer around and then like him throwing it and it's like going in a circle as he's just punching all these demons and stuff. I was like, this is actually a really cool fight scene. Like I loved seeing that and him utilizing the powers, in a pretty cool way. And that was one of my favorite things about the movie, is him using the hammer in the beginning, losing the hammer, fighting against Hulk with his hands, and using Hulk's hammer against him. And then at the end when he's got his full lightning, it's hand to hand, but he's like, it was like the end of a video game where he punches one person and then a lightning bolt arcs through them, and he was at like max level. It's just like arcing through and hitting all the enemies at once. And I was like, I've literally seen that happen in some of my video games where it's like I hit one enemy with lightning and then it arcs to my other enemies and kills everybody. It was like, this is super funny because it made me think of my video games, but it also looked absolutely amazing. I was like, I wish that scene lasted like a couple minutes more, just him going through, like going down the Rainbow Bridge and just punching people and lightning. Like he didn't even have to turn around a couple times. Like someone came up behind him and a lightning bolt just shot off of his back and just killed the person. I was like, that's super cool. So I loved that entire sequence when he like officially got his powers and he hit Hela with like the epic lightning bolt and that still didn't take her down. But whole ending was great. Him fighting, Valkyrie fighting was actually super cool. Loki fighting was okay. They didn't show him fight that much. Like he did like a couple of moves and like we didn't really get to see him fight a ton, but that was cool. Heimdall actually got some cool scenes. Like when he first shows up, he fights a couple of the soldiers and then he takes the people to the location where he has the rest of the Asgardians, and then he fights a bit on the bridge as well. Hulk was pretty awesome in the whole movie fighting against Thor. That was actually a really great fight as well, with them going back and forth and Thor getting beat up, and then he kind of channels his actual power and he's about to actually beat Hulk, and then the Grandmaster's like, ooh, can't do that, so he knocks him out to have Hulk do a super epic jump where he jumps so freaking high and he just comes down and just knocks him out. And I was like, that was actually a cool way to do that. So I love that fight sequence. The whole idea of Sakaar was actually pretty cool. I like the way they handled that, where um, Thor and Loki are fighting against Hela. Of course, she ends up breaking Mjolnir, and then Loki freaks out and is like, take us back. And Thor's like, no, because she was able to follow them. So she knocks Loki out of being teleported back to Asgard, so he lands on Sakaar, and we find out that it's got like some weird time displacement because he lands there, and then Thor lands there like a couple seconds later, and it had been weeks because time is just oddly displaced. Like even the Grandmaster says, like on some places I would be like a couple, or it was like almost 10,000 years old or something crazy like that. And I was like, okay, that's very interesting, and it's just like super slow motion pretty much. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. So I like that. They didn't really go super far into it. It didn't become like a big element. I don't know if they referenced that because that may or may not come into play in future movies, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then that was pretty much it. It was just like it didn't lead to anything super epic, so I feel like maybe they referenced that because it'll have something to do with future movies, because even in the context of the film, all it led to was Loki like hiding a secret for like 2 seconds because Thor was like, he's my brother, he totally knows me. And then that still didn't really change anything. It was just like they had their little conversation. Loki didn't help Thor, and then he kind of helps him out at the end because once Hulk and Thor end up escaping, that's when the Grandmaster gets pissed, and so Valkyrie and Loki decide that they're gonna end up tracking him down. And that was really it. So I was like, it didn't change anything that they got there at different times outside of the fact that Loki hit. We don't find out what happened to him and why he didn't, get tagged or anything like that. But that was really it. There wasn't too much to that. So I feel like maybe that could come back into play, especially with it being like the Grandmaster, where he's supposed to be related to Benicio del Toro's character, the Collector. Or at least people theorize that. They didn't really go into like any of that, overarching stuff or anything like that. So it was like, that still could totally be the case. We have, I think they did reference that. They are related. But yeah, nothing really came of him being like the Grandmaster, possibly being an eternal or immortal sort of character or anything like that. It was just like, no, he's on a planet that's kind of time displaced, and he would be like 10,000 years old. And that was kind of it. He doesn't seem superhuman or anything like that. He's technically still alive at the end. It's a tie, as he liked to put it during the end credit scene, which I thought was actually kind of funny. But not too much from his character. He wasn't really that big of a deal. He was an awesome character. He was definitely funny and weird. But I liked his character, but he wasn't really like that huge of a thing. So I feel like they could totally bring him back as a more vital factor, in future installments, either in Thor or just in general, considering he's like kind of just out there. But I was like, okay, I like him as a character, definitely funny. Them spending all their time on Sakaar, meeting, I can't even think of the names right now, Korg and the other bug character, the two characters that are related to the Planet Hulk storyline. That's the only reason they're in the movie, by the way. For anyone who may not have known that, like the rock guy and the bug, they're there because of the Planet Hulk stuff, and it's Sakaar and all that, but they're like the only connections. The name of the planet, those two characters, and Hulk being in that specific costume were like the only ones. So it's like, oh, maybe, I highly doubt it, but maybe somewhere way down the line when licensing doesn't matter, we can get like a secondary iteration of, Planet Hulk like actually done in movie form. They could even still use Sakaar as the planet and just say it was some crazy alien thing with the time displacement. It just took a super long time or something weird like that. I don't know. But yeah, that would be very interesting. I guess that wouldn't work because time moves slower on Sakaar, so that wouldn't actually, or time moved faster on Sakaar, so that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. If Hulk went away, they would have to say like the woman that got impregnated had like an insanely long, incubation period. So I don't think they'll do that, but maybe they can find something. Maybe we'll have that one day, way, way down the line when licensing doesn't really matter, and Hulk can have his own movie again. But Planet was cool. Definitely different from the version I'm familiar with, where it was kind of a crappy junk planet, but it wasn't literally a trash planet. So definitely interesting to look at there. I liked all the characters. Like I said, Valkyrie was awesome. Her introduction was funny with her drinking, and then she falls off the ship, but she ultimately does end up killing like all those people and taking Thor in. But she was cool. I didn't realize that she was going to actually be an Asgardian, so I thought that was kind of awesome. The scene with her with the other Valkyrie going up against Hela. That was, I'm assuming, the woman that saved her life. That was supposed to be like a reference to the original character where she has like the blonde hair and like the braids. So I thought that was cool. That was a cool way to do that, to show like, oh, this is what the character looks like in the comic book. So they had someone kind of represent that. But she had the classic outfit and stuff like that later in the film with the white and gold and stuff. So she was definitely cool. And of course, being an Asgardian, she had a ton of strength. She was training with Hulk and stuff. So I love that they had like this weird relationship where he would call her like, hey, angry girl and stuff like that. So they were like actually buddies. And then when Banner, comes out and Hulk goes away, it's like, I feel like they kept saying like, I feel like I know you and stuff. So that was funny. Of course, Banner at the end of the film trying to turn into Hulk and he basically died. Hilarious. Because I was like, I hope they do that because that would be super funny. And him hitting the ground was definitely hilarious. And he just hits the ground and it was just like dead. And then the wolf, I'm pretty sure it may have been called a Fenrir because that's another name. But the giant wolf, like, it sniffs him a little, like, nudges him, and it's like, okay, he's dead. But, of course, he transforms into the Hulk, and then he's fighting this giant freaking wolf. And that was a cool sequence. I wish that lasted longer, too. That was, like, the only fight sequence outside of Thor at the very end with all the lightning. Those are, like, the only two moments where I was like, I wish we got to see that more. Because I would have loved to have seen him, like, fighting this thing. Because they showed, like, a couple of moments where it was super awesome, like, when he's, like, basically suplexes a wolf. But they were like fighting in the water, so they're like popping up and disappearing. Probably because it was all CG. So that's probably why it was kind of done in that way. Plus there were like 3 other fights going on, so it was easy to switch around. But I was like, man, I would love to see. Oddly enough, because now that I think about it, it almost relates back to the first Hulk movie that nobody likes. But he did fight 3 giant dogs in that. So oddly enough, I would like to have seen that again because I think it would have been cooler in this with him fighting like this giant wolf, and it would have been cool. And what we did get to see was definitely awesome, like him being dragged under the water and stuff, and they're basically being pulled by the current, falling off of Asgard, and he breaks free just at the last second, and this wolf falls off of an entire realm, and I was like, that's just super freaking cool. So he ends up being fine. It takes him forever to finally get back, and then he attacks Surtur at the end, and they tell him not to. But definitely a good movie. I really enjoyed it. Loki, in a sense, got his comeuppance. Thor knew that he was trying to play him, and then it was like, finally I kind of got one up on you. You faked your death and all that stuff, like the beginning of the movie. And, he was talking with Surtur, and Surtur was super casual about it, and it was just like, yeah, Odin's not on Asgard. And he was just like, yeah, he's not there, so, whatever. And then they don't even really show Thor react to that, which I kind of like that. And he just went back, and then we have this hilarious play, which my girlfriend pointed out, the guy who's playing Loki, I'm pretty, she was pretty certain, and when I looked at it, I was like, I do think that was Matt Damon. If not, that's someone that looks a lot like Matt Damon. So that was definitely funny. I forgot to even check the credits when I was watching that, so I don't even remember. I didn't even think to check during that scene, because I totally forgot it's so early on in the movie. But that was a cool scene where he was like, like he knew it was Loki, like, you're going to make me do it, and he just threw Mjolnir, and it's like, nothing's going to stop Mjolnir from, getting into my hands when I call it back. And so, of course, Loki kind of outs himself, and he's like, you ruined everything by coming back. And then Loki kind of does it again at the end, where he's like, your savior is here. And it's like everybody on the ship and stuff, like he's such a great person. But it was kind of funny, and ultimately in the end, Thor does take over as the king, and he is now the new king of Asgard. And their plan is to go to Earth. But then, of course, we have our extra credit sequence, or I guess our mid-credit sequence, where this giant ship comes in, and I would assume that they're all taken. It looked like a Chitauri ship, but I'm sure that's not what it was, because honestly, the ship itself looked just like the mask that the Chitauri were wearing, so that's probably what it was. Because I was like, otherwise, this is just a random ship, and no one's going to know what it is. But I have to assume, based on that literally being the only clue, was like the visual of this ship, it looked like it had to be a Chitauri ship, because it looked like the actual Chitauri masks. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I don't remember what the ships look like or anything like that from the first Avengers movie, if they ever like actually showed the ships up close or anything like that anyway. But based on how it looked, I was like, that looks like one of the Chitauri masks that they wear, where it has like the basically like shutters going down. It looked like a face mask. So that's my theory, is that that's who basically kind of tries to pick them up at the end of the film or during the extra sequence. But it has me excited. I can't wait to see where that goes. Of course, Thor is supposed to come back during Infinity War, so maybe they'll just be out there for a minute, and then we'll see, how they end up coming back to Earth and what they deal with, like, way out there. Loki most likely having one of the Infinity Stones. That'll probably lead to them having to deal with Thanos a little bit before the rest of the characters on Earth do. So we'll see how that plays out. That's obviously all theory, so that might not even remotely be how it happens. But definitely has me interested. I'll definitely be looking up some more information from people who are 100% sure what species that ship belongs to. But definitely a great way to end it. Definitely a nice little bit of suspense. And then of course, the actual after credit sequence, like I mentioned before, definitely a funny little moment with the Grandmaster getting up and be like, congratulations to all of us. You couldn't have a revolution without someone to revolt against, which is me, so you're welcome and thanks. And it's like, yeah, we'll just call it a tie. So definitely a silly little extra scene, much like, the Spider-Man one. It didn't really add too much. It was just a nice, funny little scene. But definitely enjoyed the movie. Love the action, love the comedy, love the characters. Executioner, I thought he was interesting. I thought he was going to be a villain from the very beginning, but that was not the case. And then ultimately he kind of comes back as a hero at the end, for Asgard, and he uses the rifles and stuff. And then Hela's just like, oh, that sucks. And she just chucks a spear right through him, and it's just like, yep, he's down. Just like everyone else that she's always fighting through the entire effing movie. Because, she had no challenges until Surtur came along. And she was, as little as a challenge everyone else was to her, that's how she was to Surtur. It was like, Surtur, no challenge from Hela, and Hela, no challenge from anyone else in the entire film. The only person that should have fought her, that I feel like I wish they did, was the Hulk. He was the only person that didn't get to jump into that fight because they had lesser characters. But I would love to have seen what would have happened if Hulk went up against her, because it would have been the same as, with Thor. They have enough strength to somewhat deal with the Hulk, at least for a certain amount of time. Her being more powerful than Thor and Valkyrie and Loki probably adds to that, even more time. So I would have loved to have seen that happen. Plus, just her spawning blades in him. I don't know how that would have affected him as far as, him living or dying. So maybe they didn't even want to bother with all that, because that was pretty much her whole fighting style, was that she would spin and then a blade would come out of nowhere, and that was just how she did. It would just poof right out of the sleeve. The part where she stabbed Thor with her elbow and stuff. So that was kind of her whole fighting style, was that she would constantly summon blades with every strike. So maybe they didn't want to deal with all that, because technically, if the Hulk gets stabbed enough, he can technically die. It's so weird. It depends on who's writing it or whatever. But Hulk has a weird balance thing where it's he's basically immortal sometimes. Other times it's oh no, they knocked him out and he's wounded. So it's you never freaking know. So they kind of avoid the whole situation there. But still a great fight sequence. Love the movie. Excited to see where we're going, but of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this one, the action, the comedy, the new characters, how you think they might be implemented into, the future of the cinematic universe. We'd love to know your speculations on that ship at the end. Was it a Chitauri ship? Was it, belonging to Thanos, somebody else? I highly doubt it, but Skrull invasion, I've been thinking about that forever. I was I would love that, but in movie form, I don't know if that would work as well, because we'd have to wait years and years for everything to play out. So I don't know if we'll ever get the epic Skrull invasion, but I like to think someday we will, because that's just awesome. But want to know what you guys thought about the film, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. Like I said, we'd love to know how you think some of these newer characters are going to be implemented into the cinematic universe, and definitely want to know your theories on who owned that ship and what that means for Infinity Wars and kind of where we're headed. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.